Hello and welcome to another rigging update. It's been a while and there's reasons for that since a lot of things have changed with the car rig itself. As you can see, there's a lot more controllers going on, and actually there's one big difference between this one and the last one I showed you. Now, last time I showed you, I was going about, I had some controllers going. You could move the doors and steer the wheels and stuff, like very simple things like that. However, that got all thrown out the window since we started looking at skinning. So basically, if I turn off the mesh, you can see we've now got all these bones or joints going to their respective place on the mesh. And basically we're doing the same thing as before, except now instead of separating each part of the mesh into its wheels and its doors, the Land Rover itself now is one mesh, and instead, hang on a sec, we can now influence the vertices based upon the joints. So this joint here for the left door is only influencing all these verts that the door would, that is the door. So you go about selecting all the vertices for each part and not parenting, but adding in the weight value to all the vertices in the respective joint. So in the case of this wheel, this joint here has a value of weighting of 1, and that allows us to rotate this joint, and that will respectively move the wheel. Now let's go about adding in the weights. You can paint it in, but ideally, going into the component editor, we can select the necessary vertices, and in here see their weight values. For this joint, or for this these verts, they're only being influenced by the back left wheel joint. So yeah, that's basically what's going on here, and on top of that, you've got all the different joints named correctly, so you don't get confused. Now, instead of the controllers affecting the mesh directly, they now affect the bones. So instead of rotating the bones and potentially messing things up, you now have only got the controller to deal with. So if something breaks, you're not destroying your skinning, and it's easier to fix things later. So that's one plus side to using skinning and controllers in tandem together. Some other things. So once the skinning was done, all the weight had been applied to the joints. You then parent the controllers to the bones, the joints, and that way then you're able to rotate doors, or spin wheels, or rotate steering, etc, etc. So that's all fine, but then there's some certain things that you want to get a bit more fancy with, and that involves the use of what's called a My Expressions. And what expressions allow you to do is essentially do a bit of coding, or a bit of applying one attribute to another and having one thing affect another thing in the subsequent. So for example, one cool little expression I've got on here is when you move the car forward, the wheels rotate, and this is fairly common, but it's quite effective. It saves you having to move the car forward, then rotate the wheels. It's nice to just have everything work together at once. So for this, for each wheel, the expression on here is essentially making the rotation of this on the x-axis of this controller, taking the input of the Z translate that the vehicle's going in, and here there's a bit of math involving the diameter of the wheel and how far in basically one translation unit, how far should the wheel rotate. So basically saying how far, yeah, it's some sort of mathematical rotation, these circumference, diameter malarkey that I kind of get, but I'm not going to bore you with. That's a neat little thing that you can do. The other thing I used expressions for are on the windscreen wipers. So at the moment, if you can't see, but I'm scrubbing through the timeline and they're not playing. Nothing's playing. Over here in the attribute, I've added a attribute that allows you to turn them on and off. So if you set this to 1, if you now play the timeline, the windscreen wiper will move in a arc fashion. And this was achieved by this little bit of code here. All it is an if statement, and using, if you're a bit of a mathematician, you'll know that sine basically goes at oscillating motion, and has peaks and radians, blah blah blah. But anyway, we want the 0 to 90 motion, so we can get that oscillating motion. And all the if statement is to say if that attribute is set to 0, well, we just set everything to 0, so the time and the angle is nothing, so it won't move. But if it's set to 1, else time, which is, I'm assuming, is a built-in Mel script variable to say the time on the timeline. This is the what's the word? The I forgot the mathematical term for it, but the height or amplitude. That's it. The amplitude, I think, or the speed, one or the other. Or period. That might be it. It might be how many times per time, and this is the angle. So we're only going from 90, and subsequently on the other side we have the opposite, because it's going from 0 to negative 90. So if you turn both on, even though I'm not sure if Land Rover's windscreen wipers actually go that way, but you can get both going together. I'll play that back properly. There you go. So that saves the animator a lot of hassle. They don't have to manually move these controllers, even though they're there. They can just hit a switch and say, no, I don't want it on. Or if you're coding it, you export this, and you say, like, if it's raining, windscreen wipers come on, or there's like a switch that the player turns on, and subsequently the windscreen wipers start going. You could do some interesting stuff like that. And the last little thing that I've done is just an expression, again, to translate one rotation to another rotation. So when I would turn the y-axis on the wheels, the steering wheel turns on its z, and that's achieved quite easily through an expression where you say, I want the attribute of y on this controller to equal the rotation of z on, well, this controller. And if you do it directly, the only little difference I did was amplify this rotation in compared to this one, because if you turn a steering wheel, you'd have to turn it a lot more, because if you think about like the what's it called, rack and pinion, that's sort of the most basic steering system. The amount that you turn here is going to subsequently turn less here, so I don't know, maybe it's 1-to-1, but I felt that the steering wheel needed to go around a little bit more in comparison to the wheel. That's a nice little feature that I added. And again, you can just zero out all of the attributes, have a blank slate, and you know, an animator can come along and mess with all the controllers. There's limits, so you know, the suspension. I've also got suspension. I forgot to show you this bit. Can't go beyond certain points. There's fairly limited in that respect. And again, and I've locked and hidden attributes that I don't want them access. So like the Z, you can't rotate on this door, so it's only opens in one axis, and you can't go beyond certain points, as I've covered before, with limiting the information. If I can ever find it. No, it's always that. I always make that mistake. Limiting the information again. Now I've got one last thing to show, and that is small animation. So I've loaded up UDK, and subsequently I've done this before, but we've imported the skeletal mesh, and the only problem with this that I've found is the orientation of the bones, and that's due to Maya's differences with UDK. Apparently Maya, I think it's Maya's problem, I could be wrong, but Maya works with Y being up and down, which apparently is the only software to do so, or 3D package that uses that orientation, whereas UDK has Z being up and down, and the problem is this Z needs to be, well, where the Y is, and the Y needs to be here, and there's a fix where you need to, before you do your rig, that you make sure your Z's up and your Y's and the X are on the 2D plane. But going back on this would be very time consuming to put all the weight paints back in and then re-import it and animate it, blah blah blah. So I'm not going to do that, and it's only really a problem when you start trying to make it interactive, and you need to make sure that these orientate to the world correctly. But in the sake of having an animation and having it play, it's not a problem, and that's something I've taken from this and learned, and I'll keep in mind next time round whenever rigging something. But anyway, here's a small animation that I've put in. I've imported it. Oops. That's great. It's in here. I can look at it in here. It's imported the animation. I'm just showing you some of the features, so that the door's opening when Screen Viper's going. And we'll just plop this into the map here. And bear with me while I set up the settings here. Oops, that's the wrong one. And lastly, we just add in the anim set. That should be good to go. If it doesn't work, I shall just show you in the right, one last thing. Did I forget something? I didn't even tick the darn thing. There we go. Oh, it's just fallen off the map. And this will just loop forever. You can see the steering wheel going around there, so I animated the front. Let's just pull this back a bit so you can actually see what's going on. There's the front wheels going around. Let's get the steering wheel. There we go. The windscreen wipers. Yeah, nothing too complicated with that. Just showing how everything functions, all the controllers work, everything's keyable, and then subsequently you could use it for animating. Yeah, that's about it. And that sums up for the car rig at least. The next coming weeks, or next month, I will be exploring a character rig, and that's going to be interesting. And we shall see how that goes. And so, thanks for watching.